I remember visiting VCU with my son when he was exploring options for college. We toured VCU, and as we did, we were shown their security call boxes located across campus. If a student was out late and he or she was being followed by someone who was suspicious, all they had to do was stop by one of these security boxes and push a button, and campus police would be sent to that location. He decided to attend, and we were back at VCU several months later at a new student orientation. As we were walking from the gym to the parking deck, I noticed one of those security boxes with a sign on it that said, "Out of order." And underneath the out of order sign, a student had written the words, "Run." The purpose of the campus security call box is to provide students, and more importantly their parents, with a sense of peace and safety for their child. The call boxes serve as a parallel of sorts for the way many of us are living our lives, constantly seeking peace and security. Peace and security, it seems, missing in our lives, especially during this COVID-19 crisis. It's why we are sheltered in place as much as we can. It's why we wear those masks over our face. It's why we wash and sanitize our hands whenever possible. We want to feel safe. We want to feel secure. We want to know that our children are safe. Our investments are safe. Our health care is protected and provided for. That our jobs are secure. We want to make sure that we are safe to be around, that we are not making other people sick by our involvement in their lives. Really, what we want is a peaceful, decent night's sleep. We seek peace and safety and security. We seek this when we vote, when we go to work, when we put our kids on the school bus in the morning, or when we send them off to college years later. When we return home, perhaps we set on a security system before we go to bed. And we seek peace with God when we gather for worship or engage in acts of piety and religious rituals. We live seeking peace. And we will keep running from place to place to place just for a taste of that peace. Nothing could have prepared the women for what they experienced early that morning when they arrived at the cemetery. What greeted them on Easter sunrise was the surprise of their lives. Matthew puts it like this: "There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and, going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were as white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men." The angel's words to the women struck a note of hope, a crescendo of triumph. They said, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here. He is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. He is not here. He is risen." Do you know what that means? It means that the tragedy of the cross was not final. It means that the power of the grave has been defeated. It means that the sting of death has been removed. It means that we don't have to go back to life as usual. It means that the adventure of faith has just begun. Having seen the tomb empty, having heard the angel's message, the text says they ran with fear and great joy to tell the other disciples. When the women found the men and gave them the news, the men thought it was like an idle tale. It was too good to be true. But still, Peter and John ran to the tomb to see what had really happened. They found the stone rolled away. They found the tomb empty, just as the women had said. The strips of linen that had been wrapped around Jesus' body were sitting off neatly to the side. They knew that something had happened, but they were not sure what. So they ran back to the house where they were hiding. Mary stayed at the tomb. She was confused and distraught by the events of the day. Her eyes were filled with tears. Her heart was torn to pieces. And she encounters a stranger she thinks to be the gardener. "Please tell me where you have taken him. What have they done with his body? Tell me so that I can go and take care of him." The man spoke to her. He spoke her name. It wasn't the gardener. It was Jesus, risen from the dead. So now it is Mary who runs again back to the place where the men are hiding. "I have seen the Lord. He is not dead. He is risen. I have seen Jesus. He is alive." The disciples had no clue what to make of all this. You can't really blame them for their confusion. Dead people don't come back to life. Evening comes that same day, and the men are still locked behind those closed doors, hiding from the Jewish leaders, hiding from the Roman soldiers. After seeing the empty tomb, after all that running around looking for an answer and peace, Mary and the other women have told their stories, and the men are still confused. So there they are, locked behind closed doors, insecure and afraid. The tomb was empty. Maybe someone had taken its body. They didn't know. But they had no way to conceptualize the resurrection. Mary had claimed to see Jesus, but that's just crazy talk. You can't trust the words of a uptight woman, distraught emotionally, especially when she was such a close friend of Jesus. So there they are, these manly men, hiding behind locked doors, confused, distraught, afraid, insecure. All they wanted was peace. Then something amazing happens. The text says, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and side. Then John adds these words, "The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord." Peace be with you. Then he showed them his hands and sides. Peace be with you. He was risen from the grave. Peace be with you. They were overjoyed. Peace be with you. Now, if the gospel accounts ended with the story of Sunday morning, that might not have been enough. We might still have some questions. If the gospel story ended simply with the news that the tomb was empty and that Mary had encountered a stranger in the garden, we might have some questions about the validity of the resurrection. But when you read the whole story, it is Easter Sunday evening that clinches the deal. It is the joy the disciples experienced as they burst forth from behind those closed, locked doors with a sense of peace and passion that made no sense unless they had actually experienced the presence, power, and peace of the resurrected Christ. Peace be with you. Shalom Aleichem, they say in Hebrew and Aramaic. These words were and remain common greetings in the Middle East. When I traveled at the beginning of the day, you would meet someone at a coffee shop and they would say, "Shalom Aleichem." When I traveled through the Middle East and would have lunch or walk through the aisles of the city, someone would greet me and say the words, "Shalom Aleichem." Peace be with you. The disciples had heard these words from Jesus on many occasions. Shalom Aleichem, peace be with you. But on this day, it was the message that they needed to hear and a gift they needed to experience. Here's the thing. This peace was not something that could be earned. It was not something that was warranted. It was not something they could achieve. It was something that came only as a gift from grace. There is no magic number of times that you can attend a worship gathering to find peace. There is no certain amount of dollars that you can place in an offering plate to buy peace. There are no certain number of hours that you can put into religious practices and rituals that can set your distraught mind at ease. Peace is not something we gain by doing religious things. Jesus said, "Peace be with you." Jesus gave them his peace. It was a gift, and he shared it with them. As I prepared this sermon, I found many articles and sermons and all sorts of devotional readings that gave practical advice for finding peace. One article talked about the 8 keys to knowing peace. Another offered 5 essential steps towards finding peace. One sermon offered the proverbial 3 points to peace and a poem. There were many contemporary religious life teachers that tell us about practical plans, keys and points and easy steps. They draw us a map. They give us directions. They offer us a formula. They give us a recipe. But the truth is, if you could have a formula, or if there were some steps or practical advice in order to find peace, you would only need one book. But when the out of order sign is showing, and you push that button and nothing happens, you have to run to the next box. You have to run to the next place. You need to run to the next action, to the next deed, to the next ritual. You need to gain more experience in religious activities to find peace. But Christianity is not a self-help improvement plan. It's really not. I know you can go to the religious section of any bookstore in Richmond and find book after book after book from preachers and poets that offer their easy steps to find peace. But it doesn't work that way. Notice that Jesus doesn't offer a list of practical suggestions to help his disciples or to help us find peace. The text does not give us plans and formulas and practical advice. Jesus points out that the disciples who are locked behind closed doors need something that only he can give. Jesus appears in their midst and he says, "Peace be with you." Jesus comes to them at their darkest moment and gives them his peace. Have you had some dark moments over the last few weeks? I have to be honest with you. This past week to 10 days has been rough on me. I felt like the walls were closing in on me. I felt frustrated. I felt angry. I felt upset. I need something that I can't find in a book or a video or an audio. I need something that can only be given to me. Jesus comes to me, to you, to his disciples in the darkest moment, and he says, "Peace be with you." They did not find peace. We do not find peace. Peace finds us. Peace be with you. The answer is not in a plan or a program or formula. The answer is Jesus. He gives peace. He gives us himself. So I would suggest that the title to my sermon is wrong. It reads, Finding Peace, as if it's something we have to do, a task that we have to engage in. But the text does not say that we find peace. The peace of God finds us. Jesus finds the disciples. Jesus finds us. Peace be with you. Jesus is the one who gives us his peace. My wife Gina was once asked to sing in a revival service. After she sang, the revival speaker got up and he preached one of those sermons where he had all types of behaviors that he was advocating. He spoke of all kinds of religious needs that all of the members of that congregation should be doing to find peace with God. Then he said something I will never forget. He said, I would rather burn out than rust out. And as soon as he said that, I leaned over to my wife and said, either way, you're out. So if we do not find peace, but peace finds us, how does that happen? I hate asking it that way. I hate asking it sounding like, what do we have to do? Because it leads us right back towards all of those steps and plans. And that's not the answer. We know that. Maybe the answer is to do the least religious thing. Rather than plans and programs and all kinds of religious activity, maybe we just need to learn how to rest in the provisions of God's grace. I know that we are a religious people. And that word rest, well, it's like a four-letter word for church folk. But if the answer is that Jesus finds us and he gives us with his peace, then maybe what we need to do, maybe faith, maybe all we need to do is release all of our efforts to earn, all of our labors to obtain or achieve. Maybe we just need to rest and let Jesus give us his peace. Maybe we need to simply accept Jesus' gift of himself. Jesus came. He stood among them. He offered them a gift. Jesus comes and stands right where we are today, in our homes, watching a video, worshiping as best we can apart from one another. Jesus comes to where we are. We are not alone. Jesus comes to the homes that we're locked up in during a time of world crisis. Jesus comes to where you are and where I am, just like he did with his disciples. Jesus comes to us and he says, peace be with you. May the peace of Christ be with you today. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.